The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 44. Wonderland. It has been some time since I have entered the mists with no idea of what would await me on the other side. A small vial with a label saying "Drink Me" was a fairly unremarkable talisman, although I did wonder whether I would find myself in Borca. If one drinks too much from a bottle from Borca, it is almost certain to disagree with one sooner or later. My new traveling companion only made the experience more unsettling. The company of a warrior as capable as Nebula should have been comforting, particularly because she had sliced away the brand on my flesh before we entered the mists. That way I could not lose myself, speak into it, and betray us. It was excruciating, but I do not regret it in the least. I did still come close to losing myself at several points, but I had no way of communicating with Thanos when I did so. However, her presence could not help but make me think of her father, heightened the sense that we were traveling toward our doom. I can imagine you scoffing, Azalin, as making this blind journey into the mists was entirely my decision. You may hold whatever opinion you like. Thanks to this sojourn, I have a new report, and I am fairly certain that this domain contains no Agrabanian refuse. You have made it quite clear that that is all that matters to you. At any rate, we were surrounded on all sides by the mists and barely able to see more than a foot in front of our faces when the ground gave way beneath us, sending us tumbling into what seemed to be some sort of well. Either the well was very deep, or we fell very slowly, for I had plenty of time as I went down to look about and to wonder exactly when we were going to splatter against the ground. Casting Fly was no help. It accelerated my descent until I hastily ended the spell. Having learned more about the domain's bizarre logic, I believe that this was because flying can mean either traveling through the air under one's own power, or rushing at incredible speed, and the spell had the latter effect. At first when we fell, I could see nothing. As the mists cleared, I looked at the sides of the well and noticed that they were filled with cupboards and bookshelves. Here and there I saw maps and pictures hung upon pegs. It seemed as though we fell for hours, but at last we landed upon a heap of sticks and dry leaves, entirely unharmed, and the fall was over. This combination of improbable physics, domestic details, and helpless frustration was, in retrospect, an excellent introduction to Wonderland. The Lord. There are some domains where the Dreadlord's identity is self-evident, and then there is Wonderland, where nothing is self-evident. There was talk of two queens, a red queen and a queen of hearts, as well as a white queen who seemed to spend much of her time as a sheep, but ascribing any system of government or society to Wonderland is like ascribing human reasoning to a caterpillar. The Queen of Hearts was an erratic, short-tempered harridan who would behead her subjects for the slightest insult, but her fury was contained entirely within her court. There were no enforcers patrolling Wonderland for reprobates, no loud proclamations of loyalty to the Queen delivered with shifting eyes and sweating brows. Everyone beyond her court lived their lives as though the Queen of Hearts did not exist, and while she would demand the heads of any offenders who had the misfortune to cross her path, she showed no interest in seeking them out. Similarly, the Red Queen bore an obsession with order and propriety, with her corner of Wonderland resembling a chessboard. However, she took no steps to enforce this order, although her subjects seemed more naturally inclined toward it than the unruly vassals of her counterpart. I'm no expert on the Feywild, but from what I do know, it seemed more like that plane than our own, with dueling lords ruled by passion and logic. However, something about the queens felt flatter than other dreadlords that I have encountered. It is difficult to describe. I felt as though I were interacting with characters from a children's story or a pantomime rather than with actual people. This sense of flatness pervaded Wonderland. With the exception of an enigmatic smiling cat, I never felt that there was anything beneath the surface of those who originated there. When I journeyed to the Goblin King's Labyrinth, I often felt as though I were dreaming. When I encountered Jacob Marley, I assuredly was dreaming. Here, I felt as though I were wandering through someone else's dream, and although I saw various fragments and manifestations of their mind, I never crossed paths with the dreamer. The land. Although there is an underlying logic to Wonderland, it does not in any way resemble the logic of our world. Indeed, different portions of the domain can directly contradict one another, although each portion never contradicts itself. It is always tea time with the Mad Hatter, for instance, not because of his own preference, but because time itself has declared it so. But this restriction does not hold elsewhere in the realm. Once again, this underlying logic reminded me more of a dream than anything else. The sense of being trapped in a dream was amplified by my wild magic surges, which not only increased in frequency, but always seemed to do so in a manner bizarrely appropriate to the situation, transforming me into a potted plant when we were in a garden, for instance, or changing my size just when I had finally returned myself to the proper one. Of course, Wonderland could not simply be a dream that existed for its own sake, entirely unaware that we had intruded upon it. That would be too easy. Nor did it seem hostile in the way of the Boiling Isles, as if we were invaders that the land itself wished to repel. Instead, I had the distinct sense that Wonderland was trying to digest us, to erode our sanity and sense of self until we were simply pieces of the dream. On the surface, this was similar to Westview or the arcades of Litwalk, but there was something far more alien about Wonderland. Those absorbed into Westview were there to prop up Wanda Maximoff's little fantasy world. Those pulled into an empty stage at Litwalk still felt like people, even if those people were nigh indistinguishable from the characters they played. With Wonderland, again, the image I continually returned to was one of consumption, as though the land itself were an organism that would feed on our minds until only roughage remained. I do not wish to speak much on the subject of Nebula's struggles in Wonderland, for they were her own, and I owe her much. There were several points where we paused to rest, and had she not been there, I would not have, remained myself. A petty woman might note that this known associate of my enemy has done far more to defend me from that enemy than the man who promised to protect me. No one has ever accused me of not being petty. I would be remiss, however, if I did not elaborate on the ways in which the domain worked at us. Nebula was particularly susceptible to the maddening non-logic of the place. She is a straightforward individual, and being forced to react to events before they happened, or to run at top speed in order to remain still, confused and demoralized her. I suspect a childhood in which Thanos continually changed the rules to favor her sister has left her even more vulnerable to such a grossly unfair world. However, she was almost entirely immune to the havoc that the physical changes of Wonderland wrought upon my psyche. It's strange. I've never heard of potions of enlargement or reduction having negative effects on their users, but on the many, many occasions on which I changed size, I was left with a terrifying sense that I was no longer myself. Indeed, that the very concept of myself was an illusion, for how was it possible that the woman who towered over the trees and the woman who passed through a keyhole could be the same person? Unsurprisingly, given the horrors that her body has already undergone, Nebula was unfazed by these changes. I'm thankful that we were each able to help the other in these instances. I have mentioned that there are two queens in Wonderland. The Queen of Hearts, whose lunatic realm is unequivocally called Wonderland, and the Red Queen, whose chessboard region is referred to both as Wonderland and Looking Glass Land. I learned the reason for the second name when crossing from one to the other. After enduring a nonsensical croquet game that ended with Nebula butchering half the Queen of Hearts' court, or trying, at least, they kept putting themselves back together. We fled to what appeared, at first, to be an archway leading through the hedge. As we drew closer to it, we saw ourselves reflected within and realized that it was, in truth, a looking glass. Something about my reflection unsettled me, but I thought nothing of it. Everything in Wonderland unsettled me. The hedge seemed impervious to damage, and we could find no other way through, so we determined to find some way to break the looking glass and move on. I reached out and touched the surface, and as I did, my hand passed through it as though it were made of water. I felt fingers wrap around my wrist. My face contorted in surprise, but that of my reflection remained cold and impassive, and I could see now that her eyes were paler than my own. The iris is nearly white. She yanked me through the looking glass with such force that I tumbled to the grass on the other side. In a cold monotone, Thanos' daughter said, You always have been easy for me to subdue. Dread possibilities. My mirror self acted as though she wished to have a conversation with me, but I wanted none of it. I attacked her with everything I had, and she quickly turned invisible and fled. Soon afterward, Nebula and I encountered the Red Queen, who informed us that we were pawns on her chessboard. Should we reach the other side, we would become queens and could leave if we wished. After a protracted conversation filled with appalling excuses for logic, I determined that we could become whatever piece we wanted, which also meant becoming myself. So whichever version of me reached the end of the chessboard first would become me, while the other would be absorbed into her, or perhaps left in Wonderland to rot. This talk of multiple selves made the Red Queen increasingly agitated, and she finally dismissed me in a huff, which was all well and good as far as I was concerned. Thanks to this maddening conversation, Thanos' daughter already had too much of a head start for my liking. I needn't have worried. After about an hour, Nebula became distracted trying to kill a particularly abrasive anthropomorphic egg. I tried to get her to move on, but when it became clear that she would not leave until she had smashed the thing to pieces, I decided to scout ahead into the forest. I thought you would never leave the traitor behind, my own voice said from the trees, as cold and flat as a looking glass. I tensed, my eyes flicking over the forest. Do not waste your time. I'm invisible. It seemed the only way I could get you to talk. I've been waiting for you. Waiting for me or following me? I remember being you in my dreams. You don't strike me as having enough imagination to navigate this place. When she was silent, I scoffed. I thought as much. That's the real reason you haven't tried to kill me. You need me in order to escape. Parasite. I am no parasite. I am you. That is why I know that you will let me leave first. You would rather be me than yourself. I scoffed again. I take it back. You do have an imagination. As I said, I am you. I know what you want. You are not a leader, Danielle. You long for someone to follow. Max, Binks, now Aslan. Why do you think so many saw that in you? Not just our father, but Jareth, Bellows, even as far back as Alma Madrigal. You make a show of resisting, likely because you wish to test the boundaries as any child does, but in the end, you yearn for an older brother, a father, a master. Sure, of course. I think that Aslan can tell you exactly how much I yearn for a master. I was getting a sense of where her voice was coming from, and I made a big show of peering in the wrong direction. Tell me that no part of you thrilled to kneel at his feet and know that it pleased him. Tell me that you felt no relief in surrender. I was busy casting guidance on myself so that I could locate her voice more easily. That was the only reason that I didn't respond. She must have taken my silence for confirmation, because she made a small, self-satisfied sound that might have been a laugh. You had such clarity of purpose in that moment. You would serve him, and in so doing, you would protect yourself and your family. All right, I'll play. If I'm so thrilled to be Aslan's creature, why would I ever choose to serve Thanos? Because your love and loyalty are gifts, and Aslan is unworthy of them. He failed to protect you in favor of his schemes. He will fail to protect your family as well. Maybe, but he won't kill half of them either. You know better than anyone that Max would choose to die for the good of others. Our father offers a death with meaning. That is a rare privilege. He will give you the clarity of purpose you crave. Aslan weaves his webs in secrecy, but you know precisely what our father wants and why he wants it. He will never lie to you. Even our treacherous sister would agree on that point. So if I join with Thanos, I can be a knowing accessory to genocide. That's your pitch? It needs work. Aslan will never love you. From the smug edge that crept into her voice, she once again must have interpreted my silence as a sign that she had struck a nerve. To Thanos, you are a daughter. To Aslan, you will never be more than a servant. Look at all our father has done to claim you as his own, and look how little Aslan cares about keeping you. He did nothing to protect you from our father, and when you confronted him, there was no remorse. There was no concern. There was not even anger at our father. He did not merit Aslan's anger, for he took nothing that Aslan valued. You are nothing to him. Nothing. He does not even regard you as he would a useful tool. He would have taken better care to prevent our father from stealing a wand than he did to prevent him from stealing you. I know that, I said. My voice was low so that I could hear her movements, nothing more. Do you think that I don't know that? I do. You have not begun to suspect the worst of it. Because I was inside your mind, infected by your inexplicable fondness for the Lich, I failed to see the extent of his machinations. Otherwise, I could have warned our father. I can see more clearly now. Deep down, you know as well. I have told our father every unflattering word that you have said about him. When I leave here, I will share every word of every conversation you had about him. But I know that even if you survive this, you will tell Aslan nothing of what we have said here. Tell me, Danielle, which of us has a patron more worthy of our service? Well, I believe the detail of this report is proof of exactly how astutely she judged my character. Her tongue did nothing but lick boots and spew lies. Beyond that, she had said enough now, and I knew precisely where she was. I assumed my form of dread and hurled an eldritch blast into the trees. She made a very satisfying sound of surprise as she fell to the ground, fully visible, but I had no time to enjoy it. Wild magic exploded from me with the spell, an inferno that burst forth from where I was standing. I am not speaking figuratively. A raging conflagration engulfed me and the forest around me, charring my skin and clothing and hair. But it engulfed her as well. She shrieked, and I leapt upon her supine form, driving my knee into her throat to prevent her from drawing the breath necessary to cast a spell. She wanted me on my knees. Let her have me on my knees. Her pale eyes found mine, and I saw something there I did not expect. Fear and despair. If she died here, she would never fulfill her precious purpose. I couldn't help feeling a stab of pity. This wasn't some monster sent to torment me. This was me. The brands and scars that had enslaved me to Thanos' will had enslaved her as well. She had no choice but to be what she was. I had been suffering nightmares so horrific that I went to my bed each night with tears of dread at what awaited me there, but she had been living those nightmares. She didn't deserve my hatred. But she had it. The wild magic rose in me again, but this time it was not an uncontrollable surge. I could shape it to my will. I locked my hands on either side of her burned and blackened face and channeled it into her, savoring her growing terror. Let her experience a fraction of the fear, the helplessness, the humiliation that had been mine for the better part of a year. Her charred flesh shriveled beneath my touch, and a nimbus of light began to rise from her like steam from a kettle. I knew what that light was. I had seen something like it only once before, surrounding my brother in the cemetery over 20 years ago. Perhaps I should have felt conflicted about what I did next. But I was not stealing life from another. This life was mine, stolen from me, and I was reclaiming it. I left her withered corpse in a circle of blackened vegetation and returned to look for Nebula. Parting thoughts. Before I could reach Nebula, the world shuddered, and the mist swept in around me. While I had been confronting my other self, Nebula had found a sleeping child in a blue dress and shaken her awake. The moment she did so, the mists poured in like water through a breached hole. I have no idea of who this girl was or why we were in her dream, but Nebula said, and I believe she's correct, that this was the only true way to escape Wonderland. Had we reached the end of the board, the Red Queen would have put us through some other senseless game. Whether because I destroyed my other self, or because of the healing energy I reclaimed from her, or because the fireball burned the intricate lines of the glyphs, or all of these things, my scars are blurred and broken now, and examining them with eldritch sight reveals no arcane aura. Of course, I do not trust my own perception in this, for I had seen no aura around them at any point since they were first carved. However, Nebula has recited the phrase that activated me in Agrabah on several occasions, and there's been no effect. I believe that I'm free. I'm not unchanged. My eyes are paler now, perhaps because I took part of her into myself. My scars are no longer magical, but they're still a part of me, and will never be rid of them. My unnatural nightmares will be gone, but I suspect that Thanos will join the Sanderson sisters in plaguing my mundane ones for the rest of my life, as my patron insisted was happening from the start. But I'm free. We've traveled to the next destination on my itinerary. Nebula has agreed to remain with me for a few days before striking out on her own to take revenge upon her father. I want to be absolutely certain that my other self will not reemerge, and there's still the very real chance that Thanos will send other agents here. I almost hope he does. I don't think they're ready for the takedown. Regards, D.
I am fully aware of the multiplicities of self and the effect it can have on one's own mind. There is, after all, no greater lie than the ones we tell ourselves. The Titan's daughter is a part of you, as much as you long to deny it, and it is abundantly clear that you have misgivings about our relationship. Yet another part of you longs to hold on to what we have developed over years of service. Otherwise, why diligently write this report on a domain that is not on your itinerary, nor contains any information regarding Agrabanian refuse, and thereby, according to you, would hold no interest to me? My ways are secretive, and I plan from deep within the shadows. You know this, and still assume much. In return for the power I grant you, the protection I have placed over your family, I ask only for trust and devotion. After a mere 7 months of having sworn both to me, it is transparent you are incapable of either. Espionage is a subtle art. Spies gain trust by gathering information on an individual for approaching them and offering them exactly what they want. Be that projection, companionship, common foe, carnal pleasures. I will not trust a known associate of the Titan. Furthermore, the effects of wild magic are often unpredictable and temporary. As previously stated, it is imperative that you return to Darkon immediately.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Azalin Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at darklordazalin. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening. Dear Binks, it's been a week, and Nebula has departed, but I need to tell you what happened before she did. We had been in Golden City for 3 days. Despite Aslan's demands to the contrary, I had no desire to return to Darkon, and I felt far safer with her than I would have with him. He can mistrust her as much as he likes. He has made it abundantly clear that he is incapable of recognizing a genuine attempt at connection. He ignored me when I said I was in danger. Now he ignores me when I say I'm not. Typical. At any rate, I'm speaking of Nebula, not Aslan, thank the gods. The towering buildings of Golden City reminded us both of Wyvern. Apparently, when she and her sister had stolen the Eye of Odin, Nebula had also been thrown from the castle walls by Demona, although she had been rescued by another gargoyle who had lived there at the time. The conversation turned, as it often did, to her plans to hunt her father like a dog and tear him apart slowly as he had done to her. In truth, I was sorely tempted to join her, but as unappealing as my service to Aslan may be, I have a job to do. I have no idea why I did what I did next. Perhaps it was simply because I felt such peace at knowing that I was free of the nightmares, the missing time, the sense that my sanity was slipping away, and I wanted to share that peace with someone. I'm so sorry for what he did to you, I said. I was in his power for less than a year, and it nearly broke me. I can't imagine the strength it took for you to endure an entire lifetime with him. I can't imagine the pain of what he did to your body, but for what it's worth, I think you're beautiful. She jerked her head toward me in a quick, sharp movement, as though she thought I were mocking her. Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and kissed her. She was hard, all metal and sinew, but her mouth was soft. She didn't pull away, but she didn't return the kiss either, and heat flooded my face as I pulled back. I'm sorry. I overstepped. So, can you tell me more about that purple gargoyle who saved you? I was never quite sure that there were gargoyles other than Demona. We returned to simpler topics with minimal awkwardness, and the next 4 days passed as most of them had, with me doing the lion's share of the talking, and Nebula's silence seeming mostly companionable. The night before she left, we were in our room at the inn, trying to determine a system to contact one another if necessary. I know the next few locations on my itinerary, assuming Aslan doesn't change them in order to throw Thanos off my scent, I said. You should be able to reach me for the next few months at least. I've told you about Mama Odie in Crescent City. She might be willing to pass messages. I'd rather you didn't send anything through my family. I want to keep them out of this part of my life as much as possible, but I suppose you could go through my neighbor, Dottie Underwood. She watches my house while I'm away, and she's a little absent-minded, but... I stopped. Her hand had not been touching mine a moment ago. Of course, Nebula was lacking in social graces. Perhaps she had little sense of the concept of personal space, but I had seen no evidence of that during our travels. I looked from her hand to her face, my eyebrows raised. Nebula lunged forward so quickly that I thought she was attacking me. In a way, I suppose she was. It was so clear that she had never done this before, and equally clear that she was starved for touch. Her movements were hungry and graceless and utterly sincere. "Wait," I said after a few moments, pulling away. I would have been panting if I'd still needed to breathe. "Wait, if this is your first time, or even if it isn't, I want to be clear. I don't know if this means anything. Not really. I mean, I like you. I really like you, but I think I need to feel like my body is mine, like I'm mine, and do you want this or not?" I stopped. God, she was beautiful. Those dark eyes were blazing the way they did just before a battle. She didn't just want to touch me. She wanted to conquer me. And in that moment, my other self was completely right. I yearned to surrender. I want this. I want you. Then stop talking. I did. I had thought very little of intimacy since Titan, but On the rare occasion that I did, I assumed that I would use Mask of Many Faces to hide my scars. I often did so when I undressed in private. I could not bear to look at them myself, and the idea of anyone else seeing them, especially at such a tender moment. I had thought it akin to letting Thanos into my bedchamber. But he had done so much more to Nebula's body than to mine. How could I call her beautiful and then cover my own scars in shame? It would put my heartfelt endearments to the lie, and if anyone understood what it meant to bear his marks and to wish to rise above them, it was her. Thanos broke both of us into a million pieces, and we can't go back, but now I feel there's a chance, just a chance, that we could go forward instead. I wish she hadn't waited until our last night to approach me. I wish that she would stay, or that I could go with her, but perhaps as different as we are, we wouldn't be able to sustain more than one night. Maybe that one night was all we needed. A chance to remember that he didn't destroy us. A chance to remember that I'm more than what he wanted to make of me, than what Aslan still wants to make of me. A chance for both of us to remember that we're not alone. Love, D.